Hi everybody, Bad Wolf here. Today I'm going to talk about something that has annoyed Doctor Who fans for decades, and something that has almost no consistency. That's right, I'm kicking off this Doctor Who fan video series with a big one. The Doctor's real age. So, the Doctor's age is a complete mess of a topic. When the show itself does address it, it's wildly inconsistent. Let's take a look.
Well, if we count in Earth terms, I suppose I must be about 400... Yes, about 450 years old.
I'm beginning to lose confidence for the first time in my life. And that covers several thousand years.
I'm not old. What?
759?
756. That's not old.
Well, how do you think I feel? I'm a 900-year-old Time Lord.
Well, go on, quick. 953.
Who would have thought she would have been so obvious? That's my age. And the Rani's.
She slapped you.
900 years of time and space, and I've never been slapped by someone's mother.
Your face.
It hurts.
You're so gay. When you say 900 years,
That's my age.
you're 900 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 903 years old, and I'm the man who's going to save your lives and all 6 billion people on the planet below.
And since when do you drink wine?
I'm 1103. I must have drunk it sometime. Oh, why, it's horrid. I thought it would taste more like the gums.
1103. You were 908 last time we saw you.
And you've put on a couple of pounds. I wasn't going to mention it.
How old are you now? I don't know. I lose track. 1,200 and something, I think, unless I'm lying. I can't remember if I'm lying about my age. That's how old I am. 400 years older than me, and in all that time you never even wondered how many there were.
I'm the Doctor. I've lived for over 2,000 years, and not all of them were good.
Right. So, the simplest explanation, and one that discussions of the Doctor's age typically default to, is that he has no idea how old he is, or he's lost count, or he's been giving his age in different measurements of years every time. However, I've never been entirely satisfied with that verdict. So, what I'm hoping to do in this video is to come up with a somewhat definitive actual answer to the Doctor's age. Now, because of the consensus that the Doctor doesn't even really know how old he is, I'll go ahead and say that it's entirely unlikely we can ever take his word for it. Therefore, I've made the controversial choice to disregard the ages ever given to us from the Doctor himself. Instead, I've come up with something that one might say is a bit of a crackpot theory that requires a little speculation. And what's interesting is that this theory suggests the Doctor is much, much older than he ever lets on. And before we get into this, I want to take a moment to address that this theory is right now only going to take the TV series into consideration. I'm fully aware that there may be spin-off media that further complicate this theory or even contradict it entirely. So, for simplicity's sake, I'm only taking the TV series itself as canonical. The basis for this theory comes from the 11th Doctor's final episode, The Time of the Doctor. In this episode, we see something unique. The Doctor, or any Time Lord for that matter, stays in a single incarnation long enough to physically age. In the narrative of the episode, the Doctor spends 900 years defending Trenzalore. Now let's take a look at how the Doctor looks before and after. Let's say that the Doctor looks about 30 years old before he begins his stint on Trenzalore, and looks about 90 at the end of it. Now, with some quick math, that gives us a benchmark for how Time Lords age within an individual incarnation. The ratio here indicates that Time Lords age approximately 1 year by human standards for every 15 years of actual time. From here on, I'll be referring to this ratio as the ratio or our theory. So this theory is an approximation based on an estimation of how old the Doctor looks. However, this does give us a way to determine the age of each individual incarnation of the Doctor, which is by comparing this ratio to the age of the actual actor playing the part. Let's go through each one. William Hartnell, the first Doctor, first assumed the role at age 55 and continued it for 3 years, making him 58 when he left the series. Now, if we assume that Time Lords are born as children and age naturally from there on... Oh, just as an aside, looms are not a topic you want me to get into today, trust me. The ratio I came up with earlier means that if he's aging 1 year for every 15 years of real time, the Doctor is 870 years old already at the time of his first regeneration. Patrick Troughton, the second Doctor, is also in the role for 3 years, which should add another 45 years to the Doctor's age. Note that I say it should, because yet another monkey wrench gets thrown into the works by the Season 6B theory. Now, there's enough information on this theory for me to do an entire video devoted to just that, but the short version is that based on things said in The Five Doctors and The Two Doctors, a lot of fans theorize that in between his trial in the War Games and his actual forced regeneration and exile, the Doctor acted as an agent of the Time Lords for some time before his sentence was carried out. This is relevant to our theory because in his later return appearances, which most assume take place during Season 6B, Patrick Troughton has noticeably aged. In-universe, we can conclude that this incarnation of the Doctor has aged much while working as an agent of the Time Lords for who knows how long. The oldest we see him on screen is in 1985's The Two Doctors, meaning that between his first and final appearance, Patrick Troughton has aged about 19 years, which, by our ratio, means that this incarnation of the Doctor is around for 285 years, making his age at regeneration 1,155 years old. Mercifully, the third Doctor is relatively straightforward. Jon Pertwee was in the role for 4 years, which should mean that his incarnation is around for about 60 years. At the time of his regeneration into the fourth Doctor, this puts him at 1,215 years old. Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor, is the actor who plays the role for the longest number of on-screen years in real time, chalking up a whopping 7 seasons. Tom Baker, of course, ages 7 years in accordance, meaning that the fourth Doctor lives for around 105 years according to our theory. This puts the Doctor's age at 1,320 years. The fifth Doctor is among the shortest-lived incarnations. Peter Davison played the role for 3 years, and if the character ages accordingly, that means he's around for 45 years, putting the Doctor at 1,365 years old at this point. Colin Baker, the sixth Doctor, has 2 seasons of screen time. However, because there was a gap year between his 2 years, that means Colin Baker ages 3 years, just like his previous incarnation. This means that the sixth incarnation lives for about 45 years and puts the Doctor overall at 1,410 years old. However, because of the fact that you don't really see the sixth Doctor's face at the time of his regeneration, he could potentially be much older, and this would also jive with the spin-off media that I said I wasn't going to address. In short, the sixth Doctor could potentially have lived much longer than this, but I've decided to play it safe and stick to the known facts. Sylvester McCoy played the role of the seventh Doctor for 3 years on television. However, his regeneration happens in the 1996 TV movie after a 7-year hiatus. So, from his first appearance on the show in 1987 to his final one in 1996, Sylvester McCoy ages 9 years. This, by our theory, means that the seventh Doctor is around for 135 years, putting him overall at 1,545. Paul McGann, the eighth Doctor, has a similar situation. He first appears in the 1996 TV movie, but his regeneration isn't seen until 2013's minisode Night of the Doctor. This means that from his first appearance to his last, Paul McGann ages a whopping 17 years. So, by our ratio, this means that the eighth Doctor lives for an impressive 255 years, and that the Doctor is overall 1,800 years old on the dot. Now comes yet another complicated one, John Hurt as the War Doctor. While his lone screen appearance is in the 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor, the earliest glimpse of him we get in his life is a reflection in a goblet from the end of Night of the Doctor. This was made using a stock image of a younger John Hurt taken from the 1979 miniseries Crime and Punishment. So, as he first appeared in this image to how he appears as the War Doctor, John Hurt ages a whole 34 years. As such, our theory projects that the War Doctor is off fighting in the Time War for a whole 360 years. So, by the time the Time War ends, the Doctor is 2,160 years old. The ninth Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston, is another tough one to call. Christopher Eccleston only played the role of the Doctor for a single season. However, because we never actually see his face following the regeneration into the Ninth Doctor, we can't say for sure exactly how much he ages. This could potentially mean he's around for much longer than the audience gets to see on screen. Thus, in the interest of playing it safe, just like I did for the Sixth Doctor, we'll only add his one on-screen year and assume that the Ninth Doctor has a 15-year tenure, making the total age of the Doctor 2,175 years old. David Tennant's 10th Doctor one is finally another straightforward one. Despite apparently having plenty of off-screen adventures, he doesn't physically age much beyond the 4 years he spends in the role. To be safe once again, I'll just take this total. The 10th Doctor probably lived for around 60 years, bringing the Doctor's total age up to 2,235. Oh boy, now it's time to talk about the 11th Doctor. He has not one, but two significant additions to his age in-universe. As I mentioned, this theory originates with the 900 years he spends on Trenzalore, but prior to that, he has 200-ish years of solo adventures that happen between Series 5 and 6, at least from the viewer's perspective. Granted, we just have his word for this, but I think it's reliable enough to include. So those two alone are enough to add 1,100 years to the Doctor's lifespan, plus the 4 years that Matt Smith ages naturally while he's in the role, adding another 60 years. In total, the 11th Doctor existed for 1,160 years, and this makes his age 3,395. The 12th Doctor again adds little fanfare to the Doctor's age. Peter Capaldi simply ages 4 years from his first to final appearance, adding yet another increment of 60 years for a final total of 3,455. Now, I know some of you may argue that the literal millions of years he spends being destroyed and recreated in Heaven Sent should inflate this figure, but because he was recreated from a new duplicate each time, I would argue that this almost certainly shouldn't count towards his physical age. Some would say the same about the time he spent in the stasis chamber in Under the Lake / Before the Flood, but as he was in stasis, he wouldn't physically age there either, so I choose not to count that either. Obviously, I can't add the 13th Doctor just yet, as it's currently unknown how long Jodie Whittaker will stick around in the role for. So that leaves us with 3,455 for the Doctor's final age, based on a somewhat arbitrary estimate. Some may argue flaws in it, and there certainly are some, like the Doctor's companions aren't aging in accordance with this theory as well. I address this by assuming that each incarnation of the Doctor probably has loads of off-screen time where they have adventures the audience doesn't get to see. Spin-off media certainly loves to fill those gaps, by the way. In any case, I feel my basis for this theory isn't too unreasonable. But who knows? This is just a theory I choose to put forth to satisfy myself. If you agree, that's great. If not, that's also cool. I just thought this would be an interesting topic to cover in a video, so take it as you will. Let me know in the comments if you have any other Doctor Who fan theories you think I should cover, and have a good day.